Good people. Welcome to the latest episode of Jonathan Thinks. I am Jonathan Collins, your friendly neighborhood democracy scholar. I've got a few things on my mind, and maybe, just maybe, you've been thinking about them too. And the first thing that I have on my mind, and you're probably not going to believe this because I hope that I don't give off this energy, but there's actually the reality show Traitors. Is this show, I'm fascinated by it. I can't stop thinking about it. My wife and I, we watched the entire season 4 of the American season, and of course the season finale and the reunion episode. And what's interesting to me about this show, a little bit of background, it's a show where they bring together all of these like reality TV stars from all these different shows, and they secretly assign a couple of them the role as traitor, and everybody else is considered a faithful. And they play this game where the traitors get the opportunity to kill off faithfuls after every round. And the ultimate way to win the game is if the faithfuls all get together during these voting sessions and vote off all the traitors, or if the traitors can stay low key enough and get the faithfuls to vote off one another, then the traitors win the game and they win money at the end. And spoiler alert, the game ended up being won by this white guy from Alabama named Rob. And what's fascinating to me about this show is that in a moment where it just feels like there is no agreement, where like America is just at each other's throats. We had the State of the Union address where we had a president who was talking all this stuff about immigration and, hey, we are in the golden age of America when the economy is tanking, jobs are in the toilet, and only thing that we're doing is sending ICE into blue cities to kill American citizens. While this is happening, no evidence of political unity. This show Traitors provided what I thought was an interesting display of actual cross-cultural, multiracial unity. Because let me tell you, if you went on social media the night of the season finale, and especially the next day, there was so much unity around people hating the guts of of Mara, the last faithful, who ends up losing to Rob. And I've seen memes, I've seen jokes, but folks of different races, different economic backgrounds, everybody seems to be in love with this show, and everybody seems to have been captivated by these characters. And it raised the question, what makes these traitors, white guy from Alabama, black woman, Candace, from also, I think, from Alabama, white woman, Lisa Rinna from Newport Beach, California, these folks that are from conservative areas that you would think a liberal audience would never gravitate towards, what makes them so compelling? And it's because we watched them, even knowing that they were traitors, knowing that they were deceitful, we watched them build relationships across the room, across the game, across the castle. They connected with other folks. They were relatable, they were personable, and they showed themselves to be people who were willing to build bridges and build bonds and form connections with other people. And that's just something we're not seeing from our politics. We're not seeing a president who's looking to build bonds and build bridges across difference. We're not seeing our political elites, our political representatives do anything like this. But this show, Traitors, was interestingly refreshing because it did that. These folks who are just eccentric characters, who are all about clout and followers and social media engagement, flaws and all, they gave us a moment where we could come together and unify around the idea of supporting these people who seem to genuinely like each other. And so, is it a perfect moment for America? Absolutely not. But there's something interestingly refreshing about this show, Traitors. But that's what I think. I'm curious to know what you think. Hit the comment section. Let us know. How did you feel about Traitors? Did you like the show? Do you agree with my point about cultural unity? Am I seeing this with rose-tinted glasses? let me know. But I think it's really interesting. Something else that I found really interesting was the BAFTA awards. Then there's been a lot of conversation, a lot of people talking about this. So BAFTA, the British Academy of Film and Television Awards show, this happened, I think it was in London last week. And of course, the moment that went viral is Michael B. Jordan and Delroy Lindo up on the podium giving an award, and then this man, John Davidson, who we later find out has Tourette's, is screaming the N-word, during the presentation. And then once the recording hits the internet, everything goes crazy. And it made me think about, so there was this one time when I was in graduate school, my friends and I used to go play basketball on Sundays at a park. And one day, like right in the middle of our basketball game, I look over to the side of the court and there's this white guy who looks destitute and obviously has some things going on. And like right in the middle of our pickup game, he looks at me and he just starts screaming the N-word. You're a N-word. You're a N-word. You're a N-word. And I was so caught off. I had no idea what to do. That had never happened to me where somebody publicly was just like looking at me and screaming the N-word. I was like, I didn't know what was going on. I'm in the middle of LA, Los Angeles, California. I'm in Santa Monica. Like the last thing that I expected to happen was to just be called the N-word. And so I know from that perspective how embarrassing it must have felt for Michael B. Jordan and Delroy Lindo to experience that, to be publicly embarrassed. And, I was just at a park. They were at an award show in front of their peers and in front of the world. But not only is it embarrassing, what's interesting to me is the difference between those situations, which is in my situation, there was really nothing that I could do. There was no measure that could be taken. There was nothing outside within my control that I could do to change the situation that was occurring. With the BAFTA awards, there was an entire list of things that could have been done. I mean, this is a pre-recorded ceremony, so they could have blurred out or omitted the use of the N-word, or at least like the N-word being shown in the version that we see publicly. So they could have screened it out. They could have made sure that, John Simpson, because of his condition, maybe you keep him in the green room, during these presentations, especially when there are Black presenters at the front. There could have been an immediate apology from the BAFTA awards themselves. There should be consequences for the producers. There's an entire list of things that could be done in this situation to make the situation better. But we got none of that. And that's what makes being Black in America painful. That's what makes being this group that is constantly discriminated against and hit with bias. That's what makes it hard. It's not just the fact that we are constantly experiencing, racial bias and racial discrimination. It's not just the fact that, opportunity is not available to us in the same way. It's that even when there are opportunities for the powers that be to do things to remove some of these barriers, to remove some of this discrimination, it still doesn't happen. It's when Black Americans finally start to get a little bit of opportunity, and then we get a president that bans DEI, that goes into the State of the Union address that we just saw and proclaims, we ended DEI. That's what makes these moments painful. That's what makes it hurtful. Not that John Simpson used the word, but the fact that there were so many things that could have prevented us from knowing that this moment happened, and none of those measures were taken. That's the disrespect. Speaking of disrespect, that's the sentiment that a lot of people have towards Gavin Newsom right now. And so Gavin Newsom is the governor of California, and he recently went viral for speaking at an event in Atlanta that was moderated by Mayor Andre Dickens.
Press upon you. I'm like you. I'm no better than you. You know, I'm a 960 SAT guy. and, you know, and I'm not trying to offend anyone.
But he caught flack for this because he says this after saying that I'm just like you. And I think the world assumed that he was talking to a mostly black audience and that he was saying that I'm just like you. I did poorly on a standardized test, suggesting that black people are not strong academically, and that he actually connects to black people because of that. But if you look at the full clip, he didn't say those two phrases together. What he actually said before saying I had a 960 SAT score, he says, I'm no better than you. And so he's actually using this moment to show that he is not of this elite political class. I'm no better than you. I'm not a superhuman. I'm not a person who is deserving of being considered to be put on a pedestal above you. I'm just like you. And I think there's nothing wrong with that sentiment of him actually, being vulnerable about his neurodivergence and his struggles with standardized testing, and how that makes him actually more like the common American than we think. And I think we should also want from our politicians folks who are more like us, everyday normal folks who experience some of the challenges that we experience on a daily basis. We should be at a point where we've had enough of this elite political class, of Bushes, of Trumps, of Clintons. Like, we need fresh faces and people who have actually walked in our shoes. And so Gavin Newsom comporting himself to be that, I think, is a good thing. Now, if we want to be critical, we could be critical of Gavin Newsom because, Gavin Newsom as a person, he has had some very questionable things going on. We should be mad not about what he said in Atlanta. We should be questioning his integrity from going back to when he had an extramarital affair with his campaign manager's wife. And when he followed that up by dating a 19-year-old when he was in his mid-30s, I'm just like, Gavin Newsom has moved around like a dude that his lifestyle should be in question, especially when you're thinking about considering him for the presidency. And so we're missing the forest for the trees on this. I'm not saying we shouldn't be critical of Gavin Newsom. I'm saying we should be critical of Gavin Newsom for the right things. I think we should understand what he says in this moment in Atlanta. I actually think that we should embrace the sentiment of what he's saying in Atlanta. And I think there are bigger and more important reasons to be critical of Gavin Newsom and hold him accountable for some of his past actions. But the moment in Atlanta, that's not the one. But again, that's what I think. I want to know what you think. What's your take? How do you feel about Gavin Newsom? Let us know in the comments. I want to hear from you. And the last thing I want to talk about before we get out of here is, what's going on in Iran. And so Saturday night, early Sunday morning, we got news that the U.S. and Israel have joined together to essentially drop bombs in Iran right outside of Tehran. And this is essentially the U.S. with Israel declaring war. And so we are about to see an escalation of a conflict that has kind of been building up. But man, war is never what we should be on the table to pursue. And we've already had this tension going on with the Middle East between Israel and Palestine. And now what's going on in Iran is just more complicated. And it's really complicated because Iran is complicated. On one side, Iran was is a country that was a part of, I think, the third wave of democratization, where they have seen these insurgency groups who have pushed for creating more stability and at least some elements of democracy in the country. At the same time, it is still a place where there are some serious, serious human rights violations. And I get it. It's like, well, America, everything that we do when we go into countries and we give opposition groups weaponry and we are essentially helping government takeovers and assisting with government coups. Yeah, like, who are we to judge in this situation? But Iran is a very, 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 very complicated nation. And so the thing that I want to encourage you as this Iran conflict continues to erupt, let's just take a second and let's do our homework on Iran before we rush to the takes. Again, it's a country with a very complicated history. Just if you go back from the revolution that takes place in 1979 moving forward, there's good, there's bad, and there's ugly, and there's everything that lies between that's happening in Iran. And if we are going to have conversations of what the U.S. government should be doing and how we should hold the Trump administration accountable for invading and enacting violence in this country, we also got to be clear about who we're dealing with, because it's about to get crazy. But eh, help us educate one another. Again, drop us something in the comments. Let us know what you think about Iran, about the Iran conflict, about the history of American relationships with Iran, because this isn't the first time we've had conflict. We've had smoke with Iran. There's a deep history there. Let us know what you think in the comments. Drop us a few words. Let me know what you think about my take. You think I'm off? You think I'm headed in the right direction? I want to hear from you. I want this to be an ongoing dialogue between us as a community. And on that note, good people, that concludes today's episode of Jonathan Thinks. Again, I am Jonathan Collins, your friendly neighborhood democracy scholar. Thank you to our producer, Mo, who's working behind the scenes. Remember that every time we convene, it's an opportunity to grow. We do it with love, we do it with joy, and we do it together. These are a few of my thoughts, and who knows, maybe, just maybe, you were thinking about some of these same things. Matter of fact, hit the comments and let us know. And with that said, peace.